So you guys are really familiar with how to convert lengths now. We know that in 1 meter, in 1 kilometer there are 1,000 meters. So if we're going to go from big unit, kilometer, which is enormous, to meters, big unit to small unit, we're on the top here, we're multiplying. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. 1 meter is the same as 10 decimeters. 1 decimeter is the same as 10 centimeters. Here's a decimeter, here's the centimeter. And 1 centimeter is the same as 10 millimeters. And going the other way, if we're going from small unit to big unit, we're dividing by 10. So 12 millimeters would be divided by 10, 1.2 centimeters. So we're dividing in this way, we're doing the opposite of what we're doing up here. So if we're multiplying from big to small, we are dividing from small to big. And the opposite here of times 1,000 would be to divide by 1,000. So that one you're really, really comfortable with and you've used a lot now. What happens then when we get to area? When we get to area, if we have a little look here, here was 1 centimetre, you can see the size of it, it's very small, compared with 1 decimetre, 10 centimetres go in 1 decimetre. What about 1 centimetre squared? Well, I've written a 1 centimetre squared shape here. How many of those little shapes do you think would go in there? Most children think, oh, well, because there was 10 centimetres going in 1 decimetre, there'll be 10 centimetres squared going in 1 decimetre squared. Absolutely not. Because what do we have here? This decimetre is the same as 10 centimetres on the length, but it's also the same as 10 centimetres on the breadth. So you've got the height of 10 centimetres, the breadth of 10 centimetres. So if I was to calculate and split this decimetre squared up into centimetres, I'd get 10 on this row, 10 on the next row, 10 on the next row. So there is 100 centimetres squared in 1 decimetre squared. So what I do in actual fact is to go from length to area, I just double the number of zeros that I had in length. So because I would get 10 times 10, which is 100, if I multiplied by 10 to go from decimeters to centimeters, I now multiply by 100 to go from decimeter squared to centimeter squared. And I would do the same thing from centimeter squared to millimeter squared. I'll multiply by 10 in the length and 10 in the breadth, giving me multiplied by 100 when it comes to area. If I had 1 meter squared and I split it up into small decimeter squareds about this, then I would also get 100 of those in every meter squared. So what do I do with 1,000 then? Well, instead of 1,000 meters in every kilometer, I would have 1,000 times 1,000, which would give me 1 million meters squared. So there are 1 million meters squared in a kilometer squared. And then to go the other way back, I just do the opposite. So it's a little bit of a cheat way to do, but if you know the number of zeros to go from length, kilometers to meter, and you wondered how many to go from kilometers squared to meter squared, just double the number of zeros. Here I have 3, here I have 6. Here I have 1 0, here I have 2. Here I had 1 0, here I have 2. I just double the number of meters that I would have had in the length, and it gives me the area. So now we know how to go from any area to any other unit of area. What about volume then? Well, it's the same thing for volume, but now we've got 3 dimensions of length. But here we had a small 1 centimetre cubed area. I've sketched it here 3-dimensional. How many of these tiny little cubes would go in a 1 decimetre cubed? Well, we know that 1 decimetre cubed is the same as 1 decimetre times 1 decimetre times 1 decimetre. But we know that 1 decimetre is the same as 10 centimetres, is the same as 10 centimetres, is the same as 10 centimetres. So to get the volume of this cube, the volume of this cube would be in decimetres, 1 decimetre times 1 decimetre times 1 decimetre, which would give us 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1 decimetre cubed. But in centimetres, the same volume of this cube would be 10 centimetres times 10 centimetres times 10 centimetres, which would be 1,000 centimetres cubed. So what we're doing when it comes to volume is we're actually tripling the number of zeros that we had here. It's okay.
Meter squared from kilometer squared is wrong.
6
Yeah.
zeros. Yeah, thank you. Divide by 1,000,000 up there. So what we've got to do now is triple the number of zeros we had here. So instead of multiplying by meters cubed to decimeters cubed, I'll times by 1,000, 3 zeros. Decimeters cubed to centimeters cubed, I'll times by 1,000. Centimeters cubed to millimeters cubed, I'll times by 1,000. What would I do then with kilometers cubed to meters cubed? I would multiply by 1,000 million. And to go the other way, I'd divide by 1,000 million. Divide by 1,000 here. Divide by 1,000 here. And divide by 1,000 here. So when it comes to volume, you're just tripling the number of zeros compared with length. And then it's quite easy to work out. Of course, you could write this as 10 squared instead, because that's actually what you're doing. And this could be, instead of here you had 10 cubed. If we did 10 cubed times 10 cubed, we get 10 to the power 6, and here we'd get 10 to the power 9. So you can write it in whichever way you want. 10 to the power 3 times 10 to the power 3. But you've got to be very familiar with it. So if I was to give you a couple of different questions then, let's say that I was to ask you to convert 127.3 millimeters cubed to centimeters cubed. Okay, I'm going from small unit to big unit, so I'm going from millimeters cubed to centimeters cubed. To turn this one into centimeters cubed, I have to divide by 1,000, which means I move the decimal point 3 places backwards. 1, 2, 3. I'd get 0.1273 centimeters cubed. So millimeters cubed to centimeters cubed could be done like that. If we had changed 22.4 decimeters cubed to centimeters cubed, I'd be going from decimeters cubed to centimeters cubed. I'd multiply by 1,000. I'd move the decimal point 3 places that way. I'd go 22, 1, 2, 3, 22,400, which in scientific notation would be written as 2.2 times 10 to the power of 4 centimeters cubed. If we were working on a question with area, if I asked you to go from 2.4 meters squared and give me an answer there in centimeters squared, I'd have to go from meters squared. I've got 2 steps to jump all the way to centimeters squared, so I'll have to multiply by 100 squared times 100 times 100. I've now got 4 zeros that I'm multiplying by, so I'll move the decimal point 4 places. 24,123 centimeters squared, which could be written as 2.4 times 10 to the power 4 centimeters squared. Okay? So this is how we work with units of length, area, and volume. Another key thing to remember here when you've got area calculations is sometimes they're giving you volumes in meters cubed, sometimes decimeters cubed, but sometimes they try and confuse you a little bit by putting volumes of litres in there. And the important one to remember here is that 1 decimeter cubed equals 1 litre. So if we were to actually work with the volume litre and put it here under litre, we have litres, decilitres, centilitres, and millilitres. To go from litre to decilitre, we'd multiply by 10. Decilitre to centilitre, we'd multiply by 10. And centilitre to millilitre, we'd multiply by 10. And we'd do the opposite going here. And the thing that's a little bit confusing is that a litre here, which is actually under metre, the unit litre, that's the whole litre. 1 litre is defined as being 1 decimetre cubed. So you've got to remember that. And 1 centimetre cubed actually is the same as, so your unit litre is the same as a decimetre cubed, and your milliliter unit here is actually the same as a centimetres cubed. And you can see that there's a unit of multiply by 1,000 to go from decimetre cubed to centimetres cubed, but you also multiply by 1,000 to go from litres to millilitres. 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000. So even though this is on a different scale, 1 decimetre cubed is equivalent to 1 litre, and 1 centimetre cubed is equivalent to 1 milliliter. And sometimes this change from metres cubed and decimetres cubed to litres can confuse you, but don't let it. Just use the system that we've got here, and remember 1 decimetre cubed is 1 litre, and 1 centimetres cubed is the same as 1 milliliter, and you shouldn't go wrong.